SBMM, otherwise known as skill-based matchmaking. You probably can't take 5 steps into multiplayer gaming without coming across it whether you realise it or not. Skill-based matchmaking is a system that attempts to matchmake you with players based on your respective skill, as it says on the box. Seems harmless enough and isn't likely to give you sleepless nights, but it is a surprisingly touchy topic in first-person shooters, and specifically arcade shooters. Likely the biggest example the SBMM debate revolves around is Call of Duty. I doubt I have to explain Call of Duty to you. It's only one of the biggest franchises to ever exist, and there are a few things of that scale in gaming. But COD's been having a bit of an identity crisis since like the mid-2010s, if not earlier, and part of that is rising discontentment with the multiplayer experience, where a massive target has been pointed at the increased implementation of skill-based matchmaking, basically accusing it of making the games miserable to play, as every game is a sweaty sausage fest, which made this here article kind of awkward. The role of skill in matchmaking. As you can see, this is part of Activision's white paper series on matchmaking, and is actually a very cool thing to get released by a developer of this size, even if it did come from the evil clutches of Microsoft's own Activision Blizzard, a most cursed union. It is a 25-page document that goes into great depth on how skill is determined and used to influence matchmaking. I'm not going to sit here and read the whole thing to you, but I do highly recommend it if it's something you want a better understanding of, and there are some things I want to highlight. First off, there are a lot of considerations that go into matchmaking in any game way before skill comes into the mix, and the undisputed most important factor in who you play against is who is playing the goddamn game. Now that is very important to stress and will be vital to the conversation later. Secondly, and this was possibly the most interesting part to me personally, is just how complicated it is to develop and maintain skill-based matchmaking. What is skill? That's reminding me of a joke from something. What is Big Bang Theory? It's Big Bang Theory. What is physics? What is skill? This section basically goes into detail on how you actually define skill, having to turn it into a point-based system, making it predictable by in-game metrics, and compatible with multiple players in lobby. It needs to be able to change and adapt without getting swept away by rapid changes in player count. It's making my head hurt just to think about it. And then there's the metrics themselves. The paper goes through the example of team deathmatch specific metrics, with it basically being the base game mode and the issues each one can have, as each game mode has to go through different metrics. They start with total match kills, a solid number that shows how well you played the objective to get kills. But it's not hard enough, it's not rock solid. A lot of players can end on the same score, and it misses the other half of the objective, which is to live, to not give the enemy team kills. That's when we move to KDR, kill death ratio, a term many gamers will be familiar with. Pretty much perfect for TDM, but it does not account for self kills. Now, I knew there were people sad enough in the world to off themselves in-game to make their matches easier, but I had not heard the term reverse boosting before, and the fact there's a term makes me greatly upset in everyone. So, they swap the death ratio for death by enemy, but even then there is the issue of time. It's seen the same if you achieve that scoreline in 1 minute or 10. Basically, it can never be a perfect system, and I think we've established that matchmaking is in fact hard. I know, crazy, who would have thought? Personally, I think this part, the defining metrics, this is where some games can go wrong with SBMM if they're going to go wrong at all. Games like Dead by Daylight have famously missed the point with the metrics they measure and have kind of promoted an unhealthy game style. Nonetheless, the article continues, going over the difficulties of measuring a change in skill over time, creating a system that reacts to you while not throwing you about the skill brackets every time you have a fluke game one way or the other. There's this particularly juicy nugget of a paragraph that even explains that were the matches to always be perfectly even, players are still likely to experience significant loss or win streaks based purely on chance. So, then we get into the meat of the conversation. Why even track skill? This is where all the good stuff is, and you've likely seen headlines and ignored articles reacting to this very segment. This is the funny part that made me go ha and start writing this video. It comes down to this sentence right here at the end of the first paragraph. When skill is utilised in matchmaking, 80 to 90% of players experience a better end of match placement, stick with the game longer, and quit matches less frequently. Not only is that a large percentage, it is also a percentage, meaning it is relative. This is where they start talking about the feedback loop, basically a sort of domino effect. Without SBMM, blowouts are increased significantly, and lower skilled players are eventually driven from the game. This means players at higher skill brackets become the new lower skilled players, and the cycle repeats until all that is left are the hardcore grinders. You can see this in more niche FPS games with lower player counts because everyone that sticks with the game is already a grinder. This is, in just about every sense, a bad thing for the game. It's not uncommon to see a hardcore fan arguing that the game should cater to these fans, the 10 to 20% of players that might stick it out, but that is how a game dies. Games need new players. It's why fighting games are constantly trying to figure out how to get new people invested. And this stuff isn't just theory either. The next 6 pages detail a series of experiments they have run throughout the years where they've loosened matchmaking restrictions, tightened them, compared it across multiple titles, and the numbers don't lie. It's important to note that the player base was not aware of these tests. Yet, when the SBMM was loosened, there was a noticeable increase in disconnections, a reduction in returning players, and a marked trend of the game feeling less fun in a 14-day period. Imagine if you just turned it off. It'd be like the Wild West in days, and you'd probably put the game on live support in a month or two. This is the part of the article I really recommend reading. This article has helped to complete the picture by giving us statistics, gross, disgusting math that fills in the blanks of a controversial topic, but it doesn't necessarily end the debate there. I want to talk a little on XDefiant.
Activating sonar. Enemy spotted!
XDefiant is a hero-based arcade shooter, sort of a mixer of Call of Duty and something like Overwatch, but with Ubisoft IP, so all the characters are based on Far Cry, Watch Dogs, Rainbow Six, that sort of stuff. What's important here is that it was very clearly designed to challenge Call of Duty and its weakening multiplayer experience, and nowhere is that more clear than in this. XDefiant's marketing and its initial draw was very much predicated on an almost total lack of skill-based matchmaking outside of ranked play and a welcome playlist you have access to up to level 25, so you can learn the game before getting thrown into shark-infested waters. The whole thing is very interesting. Mark Rubin, an executive producer on XDefiant, actually used to work at Infinity Ward, the developers behind the Modern Warfare games amongst others. I can't find exactly when he worked there, but it seems like roughly from COD 4 to 2015. He seems quite outspoken about not being a fan of SBMM and the way it was pushed onto Call of Duty, believing it belongs in ranked and not casual play, which, to be fair, there's sense behind that, right? Unfortunately, XDefiant hasn't quite worked out. It has gotten to the point where conspiracy theories have started popping up about the game actually having secret SBMM and that the devs are lying to our faces, so that should tell you all you need to know. That particular problem actually has an unfortunately simple solution too. Remember when I said earlier that the most important thing is who is playing the game? This is evidence of the feedback loop. No one else is playing the game but the grinders. You don't need skill-based matchmaking when you're the only ones left. Now, this isn't a deep dive into the games themselves. There are literally hundreds of reasons people could have stopped playing the game, but I think it's also fair to say not having skill-based matchmaking has not saved it. And now we reached the impasse I had to climb to make this video, because if Call of Duty's multiplayer is on the decline with an increased SBMM, and XDefiant is possibly on its last legs with no SBMM, and both sides are still complaining about SBMM, then where the fuck do we go from here? Past this point, the video is conjecture and commentary, but I believe there is an actual culprit that has done these games in. Time. Time, progress, and nostalgia. Arcade shooters were massive all the way through the 2000s because they were the peak of multiplayer gaming, accessible, easy to pick up, and all your friends were playing at least one of them. But that is not the case anymore. Gaming is much more widespread, the PC market especially. Online players are practically a guarantee of most games, and what were once fringe communities are now dominating the space. I miss Call of Duty as much as the next person, and I didn't even play online. I was playing local split screen with my brothers all the way through Modern Warfare 3, the good one. But the industry has changed, and so have the gamers. The average skill of people playing video games has increased tenfold, and ranked play has become the norm, especially in games where you can showcase real technical skill. Fighting games get bigger every year, games with immense team strategy continue to play a huge role, and even within the FPS market. Battle Royales gave people a place to not just place at the top of the leaderboards, but win in a game with like 90 other people, and there can be some real mechanical depth in those games. Or attack shooters, like Counter-Strike, Valorant, and Siege, where it's not just how twitchy is your trigger finger. Even Call of Duty themselves subverted their own multiplayer with Warzone, which almost immediately became the place to be, and probably still is despite the current state. Arcade shooters do not provide the same tension, skill expression, or comeback potential.
Oh my god, no! Okay! For the roundhouse, he jumped over completely!
They are simplistic in their design and purposefully require little commitment and thus lack depth. There is nothing intrinsically wrong with these philosophies, and we have all seen how they ruled the world for like 2 whole console generations, but they do not provide the same amount of value in today's landscape. Even when a good one does come around, how does it compete with the new Fortnite update, with Shroud's new tech shooter, or Terry Bogard in Street Fighter 6, which had a historical number of entrants at its second EVO, which is where you normally see a massive drop-off? Arcade shooters are fun, and who knows, they may even have their day again, but I'm afraid that focusing on skill-based matchmaking is only skirting the actual problem that arcade shooters have, which is simply that we have outgrown them. And I don't see everyone going back.